Welcome to Season 2 of Learning and Unlearning. So in 2017, news broke out that the 22-year-old water polo coach at Parktown Boys High was physically and sexually abusing some of his students for a protracted period of time. During the media storm that followed this matter, the old recurring theme of savage masculinity in all boys' schools surfaced. More shocking stories of physical and sexual abuse, bullying, hazing, and more frighteningly, silence emerged. It's under the auspices of silence that this culture has thrived, reflective of the non-verbal patriarchal pact that we men fellowship over. Today, we pull the curtain back as wide open as we can to explore the issue. We are joined by our friends Josh Ndlangamandla and Tato Mukwena, who will be giving us two specific perspectives. One from the university all-male residence perspective, and the other from a high school all-male experience. And then between Tumi, Bongani, and I, we're talking about the co-ed, high school, and varsity experience as well. Gents, how are we doing?
Oh, I'm fine for now.
Not too bad, not too bad. So I'm basically gonna ask a very general question. So basically, like if you've tuned onto the show for the first time, so basically how we reflect is we use our own experiences a lot. So we tell our own stories, because the assumption is that we're all learning and unlearning, right? So you're gonna see a lot of that. You're gonna see a lot of personal, subjective stories on these issues, on these matters, right?
Anecdotes.
Anecdotes. Right? So I'm gonna start with Josh, and then I'm gonna move on like that. Okay. So Josh, I want you to speak generally about being in a all-male res environment and how it has affected your conceptions of manhood.
Hi guys. I don't know if I'm supposed to say hi, but yeah.
Say hi again, still.
Hi guys. Thank you for having me. I sound like an expert in whatever this area is.
You are.
You're an expert in living at men's res, right?
So your boy. So there's a lot, man. Like I don't know when you speak about male residents, this is so much. Like we don't have enough time.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, while initiating them and...
Not gonna be there's a certain level that you I went to erase that.
What?
Wow. Yo, know yourself.
That's what he said, right? So as there's just a thing that happens within residences that creates a dynamic of which there's a hierarchy that's there. So now this is just on a personal level, but then it becomes very institutional and very systemic when you now have pacts of people that reinforce these things. And because we are human beings, we are social beings, whether you like it or not, you want to ingratiate yourself within a particular space. So what we will do is that you will conform to what everyone else is saying. And when it comes to like the academic sense, cool. But then it also spills over to things that are just outside of the academic space. It spills over to how you interact with other people, how you interact with women. It spills over from that. And this is like some of the things that one of like a core example that I can have is that when you're in house comm, you teach first years to do certain things, you teach them to say certain things, you teach a lot of things. Right? So you'll teach things like, which might be quote unquote fairly innocuous, things like singing songs, blah blah blah. You sit down, you dissect the song, and this is now when you're older and you're wiser. You sit down, you dissect the song with man. There's a lot of issues within that song. Like it speaks of ownership of women. It speaks of just like the patriarchy within marriages. Like, and these are 18-year-olds that we're telling these things to. You know what I mean? Just like,
and basically because you are an authority over them.
Like
you kind of drilling it.
You are drilling it into them. Like you're taking 18-year-olds who already have their own issues. Like they need to make decisions about what they're going to do with the rest of their lives at 18. And now I'm here putting on these other issues of like, when it comes to life, this is how you'll go about it. And like, that becomes one of the major things that reinforces like.
But they're also seeing the amount of social capital you get from being in a leadership position, so they look up to you as well.
Perfectly said.
So they want to be you.
We get, he was also part of like student governance. You get blazers. It's just a blazer, right?
Come on now.
But it's
Taut
not
was the federal government.
He was in the federal government.
That says EOH House Com, or that says like Postgraduate Association. You get blazers that says like SRC, like, and when you're
there's a connotation to that blazer.
5 years later, you realize that none of these things matter. None of it. I have my blazer. I don't even know where my blazer is right now. None of it matters. But at that time, there's a first day that's seeing you interact with people like, oh, this is a person of authority. They've given him said authority because he's probably right about certain things. As such, so when he interacts with women in a particular way, when he says there are a lot of derogatory things in a particular way, that's fine. It goes unaccounted for because the highest order that I have is saying it all the time. You know what I mean? The highest order that I have right now, like my senior, the person they've bestowed upon me to take care of me within these years, is calling women bitches. So that's fine. You know what I mean? And it starts from there. Like when it comes to like male residences, like it starts from there. It becomes so much worse. Like, and this is not. It can become so much worse. It becomes so toxic because you get into, as you grow older. I'd like to say I'm fortunate that I was in circles that allowed me the opportunity and also the grace to allow me to change. Like there's a lot you can change, but people like bones break the same way. No matter intention, like what you've done, you've done. It doesn't matter because you were like you didn't unlearn it before, but you've already said these things to this person. But I was afforded a lot of grace when it came to like my let's call it transformation, like my unlearning process. That my circles were allowing me the space to actually do that. Not everyone has that opportunity. But what I find in male residents is that there is no active intention to do that within the house comms themselves. And I think that's where the problem really starts. I'm not going to like say a house comm as an institution.
So hold that thought, right? Because that's when you're going to start speaking about the institutional culture, right? That sustains these patriarchal norms within these environments and these spaces, right? But like, I think it's crazy what you're saying is like, so manhood is defined from the top. That's what you're saying. Right? We get there, there's a hierarchical order that you must all adapt to, and thus they say this is how we conduct ourselves as men in this environment. You adapt or die.
Adapt or die.
That's really crazy. Tato, from your perspective, from a high school perspective, which is, a different environment altogether.
So for high school, to be honest, from a personal point of view, right, I found high school to be the strangest place to be, but also surprisingly, I think it opened up my eyes to ways in which men are kind of constructed and made and thought about, right?
Yes.
So my high school...
Because that's the construction phase, right? That's what-
Yes.
So my high school slogan, and this is how they constructed from the top, right, was fearless and faithful, right? And that can seem harmless. It, in fact, can be harmless, right?
Yes, it can be
be
harmless.
that, like, what I mean by fearless is that you're just not afraid to put yourself out there,
Yes.
right? You know, and faithful, I don't know how that can be a bad thing. But, you know, but here's what they're actually doing to you, right? So the first thing that happens, we didn't have a really bad initiation because 2008 was weird for my school because in 2007 someone had stabbed someone from Kes.
Whoa.
So when I got there, the school was trying to be less violent.
Yes,
And violence is a theme I'll talk about soon. But like what it meant, I didn't have a really bad initiation period, but here's what the initiation period was about. Like basically dominating your own body. Didn't sleep the whole weekend.
Whoa.
Dominating your own body.
Yeah.
That's a new dynamic. Okay.
We didn't sleep.
Yeah.
We didn't sleep the whole weekend. The first night
Was it boarding?
No, but we slept in the hall on the floor.
Yeah, so they made it like a in-house camp.
Warfare.
On the last day we slept. Yeah, on the Sunday morning we slept because we were leaving Sunday afternoon, basically, and we slept on the ground.
And you
That
say
sounds
to
like
your
an
mom
MK
that I
camp in exile. You know, like,
But basically, what happened in the first day was you learned the school song and the school war cry, running around the field. And when I say running around the field, my school has 4 fields, basically lined together. So it's football field, rugby field, and then cricket on the one outskirt. So you run around that whole thing for like 5 hours, not sleeping and whatever. And the idea is you leave no one behind and you're all singing at the top of your voices. And like, it's this weird thing that we're all gonna be men together and dominate our bodies together
and suffer together.
It's really strange.
and overcome together at the end.
Yeah. And that's kind of how the top was trying to construct that, like, you're indestructible, right? But there's also, we socialize each other. There's also that. And I think the biggest experience was genuinely the level of violence, right? And there are some good things, which I'll get to, I think, after violence, right? But like, someone stabbed someone at a party. That's basically what my school was famous for.
That was the year before you got into the actual school. Like, oh yeah, that's what about to happen there.
But like, ultimately, like, violence was all around. Like, you would get punched by a teacher. You would get like, from the top, the students themselves, the way they interacted with each other. There was a point where, like, when I was in grade 8, I like stepped next to a matric. So like, you couldn't step on the grass next to his shoe, or you get beaten up. And I said that.
So what do you mean by that? So give us a picture.
If his foot is here, you can't step here.
Okay.
That's too
I
meticulous.
don't even understand.
Where does the what?
He decides. He's the one in power.
So you can't walk next to me.
You
Is that-
can't.
Yeah. Okay. We're not on the same level. You can't walk.
You can't walk
like this. You
next
can't
to
walk in
me,
parallel.
right?
Yeah.
And that thing came along, and the way the top did is that we had different cloakrooms. They called them toilets.
So
But like,
colonial.
yeah, you had a senior toilet for grade 11s and matric, and a junior toilet, right? And basically, that thing is violence. Because if I'm on the one side of the school, I have to go to I must walk all the way to the bottom. Why? Because ultimately, manhood is constructed in 2 ways. You're a man, so you should be strong. But also, the older the man is, the more powerful they should be.
Yeah.
Right? And so that was the experience of manhood, right? But there was also like the idea, of standing up for yourself, I think, right? Which, when my family took me to the school, they knew exactly what they were doing. I didn't know, like, people, I wouldn't stand up for myself for anything at all, right? And so, like, I think these things, for me, schools and, like, take them too far.
Yeah.
Like, the idea of fearless, right, is an idea you can inculcate in someone in a constructive manner.
Yeah. In a
But,
positive
like,
way.
In a
man.
positive way. But, like, I feel like there's nothing. It's not fearless to not sleep for a whole weekend.
It's just unhealthy, right? Like it's just
Right. But here's the kicker. Right.
that wasn't the kicker.
The kicker's still coming. I've been kicked, boy.
But here's the kicker. In grade 8, I knew this was wrong. In grade 9, I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to go through that again.
Okay.
But by grade 10, I was a serious person in the RCL. I was starting to be serious. So like, I somehow got my seniority before I became a senior. Basically is what happened, right? Yeah, even like so after break you have to close the toilets. I could close senior toilets and the seniors wouldn't. I mean, they'd slap me a few times, but they genuinely couldn't do anything.
They recognized
Right.
you. Yeah.
Your school was a Stanford prison experiment.
But basically, what ended up happening is by the time I got to grade 11, I was doing the camps. And because power's nice, what did I do? The kids didn't sleep, bruh.
Yeah.
Why must they sleep? I didn't
kept it
sleep.
going,
I kept
yeah.
it going.
Yeah.
And for me,
Because that's how things work here.
That's how things work here. And for me, that's the pernicious thing. I didn't come into the school like that. I didn't come into the school thinking that having a weekend camp where no one sleeps is an okay thing to do. I was opposed to it the whole time until I was like, it was my responsibility. And I could be like, let's not do this.
Yes.
But I didn't. I did it. And here's the thing. Well, people got the chance to do it once. I did it in grade 11 and grade 12 because in grade 12 I was still RCL.
So Pindagabi must not.
Two-term president.
So that's the thing. It's like, and at the end, like, I obviously didn't think about it this way. I was opposed to it for self-interested reasons. It sucked to stay up the whole night, right? So I didn't think about it sociologically. It didn't register.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why, even though I didn't like doing it, I did it. And the way I justified it to those kids, I was like, I'm not sleeping just the way you're sleeping.
Yeah.
But I have the power to stop.
Yes. Yes.
They sleep.
Yes.
Right? But no, for some reason, I want them to overcome their bodies for reasons I don't understand. For reasons.
Oh, because you want to control what they do with their bodies.
Yeah, I want them to grow into the tigers, as we were called by our principal, right?
Tigers don't cry.
And it
Tigers
was,
murder?
yeah, it was
Anyway.
it was the wildest thing. And because I was never, and the violence thing came along, I was never too violent. I was never so violent that I could do anything. So when I was RCL in matric, when we had complete power, me and my friend, you guys know him. We had an action team because, we needed. I couldn't go out.
Racketeering.
Cyril can't go out and start hitting people. That's
I don't know
weird.
what you meant by action.
Racketeering.
Hiring mercenaries.
You had henchmen,
You're a kingpin, dog.
and you called them an action team.
Yeah. So we had an action team because ultimately we were afraid that the ultimate to keep order, and no matter how peaceful I thought I was, right? The school wasn't peaceful. So if you want peace, the only way you get it is
It's through
violence.
enforcement. You have to
Right?
enforce peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Through violence.
And
yeah.
so, I was, by the time we got to matric, we had gotten beaten up sufficient times to understand that, we need hands.
Yeah.
We're not gonna, give out those hands.
Yeah.
So we need someone to do it on our behalf.
Yeah.
And for me, that's,
And you had accumulated enough power to even dispense that kind of authority.
yeah.
Yo.
Yeah, we basically say you will be an authority figure if you are in our action team. It was a
Yeah.
useless thing. It was not official.
Damn, boy.
But it happened. And that's how you regulated the violence, right? And for me, it's this weird thing. Here's the weird thing. I don't consider myself a violent person. I didn't consider myself a violent person even at that time.
Yeah.
But because the situation was violent and the violence was, allowed.
And violence is manhood in that space.
And violence is manhood in
Yeah.
that space. I had to somehow find a way. We had to somehow find a way to siphon it.
Because you also needed to qualify yourself as a man
Yeah.
in that environment.
Yeah.
And so, the idea, what I'm trying to say is that what came out of that is that while I'm not myself physically violent, right, there are ways in which I was able to inflict violence that I learned from that environment.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yo, shocking.
Both of you are.
But here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing, is that your old boys experience is so common, bro. Like like anyone from Poch Boys, anyone from Kez, anyone from, especially guys that
Parktown boys.
exactly
especially.
Parktown boys, like who were in grade 8 when we were in grade 8, can tell these stories. Like that's the scary thing. You see what I'm saying? So, and I think part of it is also using that environment and some of those rituals, etc., and attaching virtue to them. That's the thing. It's virtue licensing. We do it all the time as men.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know how we spoke about, there's virtue in the man providing.
Yeah.
Not in provision,
Yeah.
in the man providing.
Yeah.
Right? There's virtue in the man protecting.
Yeah.
Same thing. Now it gets more and more arbitrary.
Yeah.
There's virtue in the body being dominated for a specific period of time. A man must have endured this.
Yeah.
Right? A man,
And at the height of his manhood, a man must have the ability to impose that and inflict it on others.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the danger.
It becomes a coming of age story. Like,
Yeah.
violence can be inflicted on someone else.
Yeah. That's savage. Like there's so much like our manhood is attached to like many carnal instincts that we have supposed to have gotten rid of a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right? But we bring back.
Yeah, and they emerge in interesting ways. So, like, sometimes they're carnal and you have to be a gorilla. Or you
Yeah.
have to be a mafia. Right?
Yes.
But either way, but either way, you have to find a way to regulate the violence around you.
Sure. So Bongani, I mean, sure, we heard really crazy perspectives from the fraternal all boys environment. So it's I don't want to say it's less crazy with co-ed.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Let's test it out.
Look, the first thing I want to do is just comment on like the experiences. You know, you really think you know someone. Like I met Josh in 2016, Tato in 2014. We've had our discussions, but now that they're laying, and like with Tato and I, it's mainly been a joke. Like, oh, this is what you saw, blah 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 blah. But now that they lay it out bare, you realize that like all boys spaces are like an underbelly, you know, where you guys know what you went through. Everyone else who's been through that knows what they went through. But the rest of society looks at you guys like, boys will be boys. And, oh, Tato, that story is really funny. But like, now that you listen to Not Sleeping for 3 days, I don't know how funny that is, you know, after a while, or not being able to address an elder in your res who you really, really need help from, right? I don't know how funny that is after someone lays it bare and tells you how their life was harmed as a result of that. But speaking from my experience, I went to a school in the south of Joburg. It was a very weird experience where it was co-ed. But whenever I talk to people from all boys schools, especially like all boys private schools, I'm always like, wait, I experienced that. I also experienced that, because we had a system where it was co-ed, but the classes were separated. So boys and girls in different
That's
classes.
so weird. It's
Right? And so there are a lot of all boys experiences that I had, but at break it was co-ed, right? Yeah. Girls are there, you behave, you do your thing, you're trying to impress them, but in class and on the sports field, it's all boys. And so some of the experiences that we had were that I think the boys had a yearning to be, you know, boys, like in some instances violent, to be bullies and stuff like that. And it always came out either when we were in class or when we're on camps, right? Camps are you know, that space where you can really let out that inclination to want to be part of an all-boys school. Because the boys at my school looked up to Kez, St. John's, Parktown. They wish...
Because that's where... Because those schools, when they're competing on the rugby field and on the soccer field, they're mooring you, they're dominating.
Exactly.
So you want that, there's something they have that you want.
Exactly. So there was really that inclination to be like, you know, those guys are tougher. Like the stuff we're putting you through is nothing, because they're tougher. And so, you know, whenever we went on camps and stuff like that, I remember, and again, in the moment, these were super funny. And as a guy who never experienced I don't know why I didn't experience bullying, by the way, because I was super obnoxious, I was loud, I was annoying.
height. I think it's
But also those reasons that you listed as well.
Yeah,
Not just
you
loud
need
and
the
blah blah.
bully.
You were the bully. Anyway,
Yes, yeah. Look, I will own up to the fact that I was a bully to younger people, right? I used to body shame dudes. I used to, cause of height and things like that. Of course, I've taken part in that. But at camps, I remember that's when boys would be boys because dudes would sleep with like a belt next to their bed, right? Just to intimidate other guys from playing any pranks on them, right? There were a bunch of pranks. You all know them, like putting toothpaste on people's faces and their hands and getting them to, but I remember there was this one specific guy, I'm not going to name him because like he recently came back to Facebook, but this dude, and no one was bullied more than him probably in the history of the school while I was there. And he was in my grade and he was in my class as well. Got to a point where he legit brought like a knife, like a vegetable chopping knife to camp and slept with it in his hand, right? And I know how wild that story sounds.
Because what if he rolls over and kills himself?
Right, I know how wild that story sounds, but it actually happened. He actually did bring a knife to camp, to grade 11 camp, and he slept with it because for him, because in previous camps, if dudes are bringing belts to protect themselves and let me bring, a knife, right? Something that wouldn't be allowed into the school premises and isn't allowed onto the camp at all. And so, although it wasn't like a traditional all-boys school in that sense, you still had instances like that where the violence was there and guys tried their best to not be bullied. Guys tried their best to not be subdued. And it's weird because as soon as girls were involved, all of that would disappear. As soon as we went back to co-ed, like the hiking, the co-ed activities, like, like climbing up walls and stuff like that, like, no whiff of like hyper masculine. It was just normal boy stuff. But when we're isolated again, that stuff would come back.
what's up with that? Maybe say something about that because I think that's really telling. Because I think it's different in an all boys environment and you interact with girls when you leave the school. But it's different. Like it's another thing when you're in the same school. And your behavior switches immediately when you see. Why do you think that is? Why is there like a yearning to be boys?
Yeah.
But when you interact with a normal society with women involved, what is it?
I think what's weird is that environment gave every single boy the two different spaces that all boys low-key want to exist in. And the one is an all-boys environment where we all get to be violent and do whatever we want to each other. But the other one is where women give you the license to express yourself. Women give you the license to not have to be hyper-masculine. Because when you're working in a team with women, you don't really want to you don't really want to leave them behind if you're doing an obstacle course. You don't, so that's the first thing, right? Is that we're always forced to still work with women. And a lot of dudes would code switch their behavior and stop being as violent, as obnoxious, and try to be a bit more accommodating. And I think it fed into their paternal instinct, I guess, to, be these soft guys or whatever the case may be. I don't know the scientific reasons, but I do know that from my point of view, it was to impress girls. I was gonna say, girls at my school didn't really like violence. That's not something that they really like. So for a lot of guys there, the code switching was also currency to impress girls with how, not violent you are, because that's not what they were looking for. So I'd say code switching for impressing girls is probably the biggest reason why, but also the fact that we were always forced to work in teams outside of the classroom meant that they were cognizant of like, oh, okay, I have to accommodate, But yeah, I can't say after all these years what the main reason was.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask a question.
Jump in, do some convo.
Do you because there's like the dichotomy between how you act around guys and how you act around girls. Like, do you find that you guys were performing one or the other? Like,
which one felt natural?
Like, are you performing niceness for girls or are you performing violence to be with the guys?
So, yeah, very good question. That deserves a paper. I would say I was performing in front of the guys. Right? And I'm not sure if that's a subjective Bongani thing, because by grade 10, my crew of friends stopped being all boys. There were 3 girls in our group and 4 dudes. And we were an anomaly in the whole school because we were the guys who watch Saturday Night Live, and girls and boys like Saturday Night Live. We were the guys who were like Taylor Swift. Right? And both guys and girls like Taylor Swift. It was weird. And we weren't necessarily bullied. We were just anomalies. So for me, my presence around guys was more of a performance, because as soon as I get around them, that's when it became like, nah, girls ain't shit. But like I take them so seriously, and I find them to be more intelligent than I am. I wasn't woke, don't get me wrong. I wasn't like a feminist ally or whatever. I was totally self-serving and selfish, but I was much more comfortable around women who had the same interests as me. And then with the guys, I was like, okay, here we go. I have to use this language about women. I have to be, for example, like I wasn't raised in a homophobic home necessarily. Like we never used slurs and stuff like that. But I learned those slurs at school, and I performed those slurs in those all boys environments. But in front of the girls, I'd never use those slurs. In front of my mother, I'd never use those slurs. So I was definitely performing more for the guys. Yeah.
It's weird because because I was in an all boys school, a normal day involved expressions and articulations of femininity that kind of, I don't think anyone was performing. I think maybe there was some performance, but there were violent dudes and there were not violent dudes, and like that was the thing. Like you knew that group is violent, that one isn't, and they wouldn't like switch up at any point. It was just there, right? There were guys who just weren't themselves violent, right?
Yeah.
And so, for me, that switch up, that like switch up is something that never existed. Like the guy,
That's very interesting.
yeah. So like the guy who likes girls is gonna be the guy who hits on the teachers.
Wow.
And no one else will. It's gonna be him, right? The guy who's violent is always carrying a knife. That's what he's gonna do for the 5 years that he's there, and his friends.
Maybe 8 years he's there.
Maybe 8 years that he's there, but like people's articulations of themselves were pretty much consistent and pretty much in this. I mean, you still have to survive the violence, but beyond that, pretty much like mostly honest.
Okay, so with us, just to touch on that, I think it's very interesting because you think we're all uniform. In my school, there was definitely a uniformity as far as the behavior, in a sense that everyone wanted to imitate the cool kids, despite no matter what your quirks are or were at the time.
Yeah.
Again, with the exception of us by grade 10 and 11, when we were like, we really like hanging out with girls and we like the same thing, so whatever, let's just co-ed this thing. But with everyone else, there was a push to uniformity, where so many dudes lost themselves in the quest to be like, in our school, the cricket guys were probably the most popular ones. The cricket guys were probably the most hyper-masculine. We never had rugby. The cricket guys were the ones that everyone wanted to imitate. Go to the same parties as them, listen to the same music as them, dress in luminous yellow Adidas track suits as those guys dress.
Like Run DMC.
Right, but run Boot MC. I don't know. Boot DMC.
Yeah, Boot DMC.
Right, there was this Boot DMC
With
culture.
Tommies.
And Tommies and, Supegas.
Tommies.
And Supegas were big in the South. Shout out Supega.
I'm wearing them.
Right now, and you're from the South, represent. So with us, it was weird because although the violence was definitely not as high as it was in all boys environments, there was still that quest to imitate the cool guys. And so by the end of high school, there were so many people whose actual characters I didn't know. Like I didn't know what people's interests actually were until they left, and some of them like art. Like some of them really like art. And I'm guessing in your school, if you're an artist, you could be an artist.
Yeah.
Maybe you get bullied, but you're still an artist. There were dudes drawing the most amazing things I've ever seen on Instagram after I left high school, because we were all imitating.
But you can't draw on a cricket field, though.
Right, exactly. So many dudes play cricket not knowing
you can,
how
but
to
it's
play
hard.
cricket.
Yeah.
Right? And so that for me, that imitation is something that so many guys lost themselves in, and was really sad because they were people with interest.
Nice.
So yeah.
Nuts.
Nice.
Dooms?
Oh, mine. It's actually shocking because I thought we'd have a similar experience, but I'm listening to you speak, and I'm like, mine is so different to that. So, I don't remember needing to code switch. I think where I went, you are who you are, but if you're not like that group of sporting niggas with a propensity for violence, who often show their propensity and act on their propensity for violence, then you're not going to end up with the most attractive or popular girl in the school. You're not going to be cool, right? So where I went, you are who you are, and you're sort of like confined to that, group of people. When I first got there, I was bullied. Incidentally, I was bullied by the people, well, specifically the person, but the people who became my closest friends. Because I made efforts to ingratiate myself with these people. So it was, I went to the school where, on average, people were generally quite wealthy, right? And I'm like this middle class kid whose mother's killing herself to put him through school. And I get there, and on the first day, I realize that there's like this specific group of guys, and there's like the rich kid ringleader, right? And
that's social capital in that school.
Social capital, right? Because remember, in that school, money is what matters, right? And so how camps, right? But how my school worked is at the beginning of every year, because it was a really, really new school. There'd be a lot of learner intake at the beginning of the school. So there'd be a camp at the beginning of every year before school starts, that sort of thing. And I remember I sort of just gravitate to this group of guys, right? And they're like, hey, what's your name? Doing cool, whatever, we're chatting. And they're speaking about this guy before he even arrives, right? So like his name, he precedes himself, So people are like, yo. He's been there. Wait, is he here yet? Is he here yet? Yo, man, this is, and it's hilarious because he's black, right? The niggas who are saying all this are white, and they're like, yo, man, you must see when this homie comes through, he's coming through, and I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. It's this place where like money is the defining characteristic, or at least in that group of friends, right? But in terms of how boys related to girls, it was really, really weird. Like I said, you were sort of like, it's kind of like, how in with a caste system, once you belong to a caste, there's no getting out of a caste. It's who you are, right? You're stuck there forever. So I initially for like a couple months get bullied by this group of guys, but it's like friendly boy bullying. I don't even know what to call it, but like it's factually bullying, right? It gets to a point where it becomes too uncomfortable, and I find other friends. But then it gets to a point where I realize that my other friends are no, that's not where you want to be, especially as like a new kid in the school. So I'm like, I'm going to ingratiate myself there. I become the bully eventually, and then like I end up like higher up in high school. Like around grade 10, grade 11, the school takes us on, or just like, there's a lot of camps, right? But this one particularly, the school takes up on what they call men and women camp, right? And it's to make you a man or make you a woman. Right? Because
what a big burden.
What a big burden. For one camp, for that one camp, they're going to do it all in that one camp. Which begs the question, what would we before we went on the camp? But anyways, so women's camp is this. You go to the Misty Valley Lodge, and they put you in a lodge, like the whole, they get you like the whole house. They put like 4 girls in there. You get to do spa treatments and like eat like macaroons and drink coffee and talk about it's camp and then talk about men, right? So it was a holiday. It was a holiday for them, and we realized what they did was, because our experience was so horrible, we paid the same amount of money, like a $5,000 camp, but the money we paid subsidized like the girls' experience, because like we had to live like. So anyways, so that's their experience, right? And it's also entrenching like submissiveness and that sort of thing in women, because I mean when I speak to Dumi about it, she explains how they spoke about us the entire time they were there. The men's version of the camp is they fake like the bus breaking down, right? And then you have to hike, I think it was 17 kilometers with a 1 kilometer elevation with bags, with luggage, right? You don't know, you're not prepared for a hike. We hiked 17 kilometers from 10-11 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Come on.
And then you get there, the bus is there.
And we get there, and then the bus is there, and it's whatever.
So Bongani had to quickly leave and go on a real hike. You'll know why just now. All right, Dumi, take us from, give us your experience.
Sure. So my experience, I was expecting my experience to be really similar to Frank's, but it wasn't, because co-ed schools, right? But it really wasn't. There wasn't so much, I guess, a need or a need to code switch where I went to school. It was kind of like there's this weird social caste where you are who you are, and that's who you're going to be for the duration of your stay there, right? And yeah, because of that, like when I initially got to the school, I was bullied. This feels so weird doing this again. Oh,
you don't have to do it again.
Okay.
You don't have to do it again. Take it from Bas.
Okay.
So Lou,
okay.
Yeah, I'll talk to Lou. She'll be able to put it together afterwards. Take it from Bas.
So it's this camp where, like I said, girls go to this lodge and have this really awesome experience, depending on like what you look for in the camp, and then we end up at the bus breaks down, right? We have to hike 17 kilometers, up a kilometer, from like 10, 11 a.m.
Where is this?
It is where is Misty Valley Lodge? I think it's either Northwest Free State, Mpumalanga, or Limpopo. It's a big ass range. I just remember Misty Valley Lodge was a thing. Not any of the coastal provinces, but it's 3 hours out from here, so I can't remember though.
In any direction.
Yeah, but just like rural felt, you know what I mean? Sure. So we get to where we're supposed to be.
After 17
kilometers, which is like a nothing space, right? We get told, find a place to sleep. And we're like, where? And they're like, just there on the grass, right? So in preparing for the camp, our parents were told to like get sleeping bags that could handle, like the guideline was get sleeping bags that can handle temperatures up to minus something. No one knew what to expect, but like whatever. Yeah. So then we learned that we're going to be sleeping in a felt, and I guess it's similar to what you experienced, because it's trying to teach conquering your surroundings, conquering yourself, conquering pain, and all of those things. So that's like one aspect of the camps that we had. The other aspect, and that's obviously enforced by the school, right?
Yeah.
The other aspect would be like, just because it's a co-ed school, and not like co-ed where like Frank's co-ed, like co-ed, but like there'll be camp, we'd go on like a geography camp, right? And obviously in a dorm, that's where you'll be split. You have to be split there. But then you'd witness some like intensely like concerning, like not concerning, it was sexual harassment actually, is the kind of thing you'd witness there. And I think luckily I was part of a group of friends who, like I said before, were the bullies. And I'll explain why I say luckily now, because that sounds terrible. But in that instance, I think we'd gravitated towards just being like the three of us, right? So just a group of like three naughty black boys who constantly get in trouble for things because whatever, cool. And I think at the time I understood like this, because it's an incredibly homophobic space, right? But it's also like a lot of coercive sexual behavior. So it's like it's weird. It was weird to understand at the time, and I think we understood it. We conceived of it as like weird white boy stuff, you know. But you'd have scenarios where you'd be sleeping and be woken up to like a naked guy in your bed next to you. It's part of the pranks that you were speaking about, you know. Or you'd be in a shower and somebody would walk into the shower and start groping you in the shower. So yeah, like actual literal sexual harassment. Yeah. And I think like that's sexual violence, you know?
Straight.
Literal sexual violence. And that's what I think even though I was in the position to no one ever played those pranks on me because I had the protection of my group of friends, right? The three of us.
Yeah.
You could do that to anyone, but don't do that to do me and his niggas, right?
Yeah.
So, and like the people who are doing these things are kind of like my adjacent friend group. Like, they're like weird white boys. I'm like, that's weird. Why are you doing that? And even when in doing it, it's not like that's weird. Why are you doing that? Because it's wrong. It's why are you doing that? That's gay. You know, why are you doing that? That's a, you know what I mean? So like, so it's not even like an understanding of why that's ethically wrong or the wrong thing to do, or
it's not
an understanding
sexual
that
harassment,
it's not
sexual
sexual
violence.
harassment or sexual violence in my mind. You're not subverting somebody's rights. You're just being weird, man.
Yeah.
So like,
Do that to girls, bro.
Right? Do it to girls. Right? Do that to girls.
Isn't that the chat?
So yeah. So my and I think that it really did inform to a huge extent what masculinity and manhood meant to me. I was always like a really, really small kid. So even though I had like the protections of my friend group, I did feel vulnerable in those spaces because I knew I didn't have like the physical capacity to fight somebody off if they did that. And there would be instances where like you're watching somebody get pranked and like you're really starting to worry about the extent to which like how far this is going. So I distinctly remember feeling a lot of vulnerability. So yeah, so I think it's I guess to my mind what the conception of masculinity it creates is that masculinity is the ability to control your surroundings, but also make people do things that they otherwise wouldn't want to do.
And to aspire towards being a guy that can make people do things.
Do things, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's, geez, these stories are really, really nuts, right? So I think we're learning, like with every instance, we're learning a different conception of masculinity, right? Masculinity is hierarchy, right? It's learned and defined from the top. It's totally top down, and you passively receive the conception of masculinity, right? Masculinity is also hierarchical and violent, right? It is especially violent, and you are closer to being a man the closer you are to being violent, right? Masculinity is also money, right? As you said with your school, but masculinity is like a stark dichotomy between men and women as well. You know what I mean? I think that's what your school was doing. They were saying, okay, cool, this is what men do.
Yeah.
This is what women do. The connotation is, we preparing you to give this kind of life to women.
Exactly.
They're not gonna tell you what to do.
Yeah.
No. They're not gonna, have any like opinion on your own career trajectory or whatever, on your own survival, etc. But as a man, you must endure these things. So that's really, really crazy. But masculinity is also sexual violence.
So, like, just back to what you said. So, in essence, it wasn't that what you were doing is wrong. In any case, it was that you were doing it to guys, and that's what made it weird.
Yeah. It was a. I always struggle to reconcile though, because like Frank, I came from a family where like my cousins are dancers, so like there were all these queer people around me, right? So I never understood the homophobia. I was never comfortable with the homophobia, but I struggled to reconcile. Okay, you're homophobic, but you're also like being sexually violent towards other men, and I never conceived of sexual violence as a function of power. I just thought like, that's weird. Don't do that. You know. And it's not to say I wasn't homophobic myself. I was very homophobic. But yeah, it wasn't because it was wrong. It's because you don't like gay people, but that's pretty gay.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. But I think it's also like it's the connotation that men give to sex.
Yeah.
Right? Because sex is power.
It is
even
power.
to women.
Sure.
Right? So even to men, sex is power. Like it doesn't even have to in their minds in the moment they're like, yeah, this is not gay, but this is power.
Yeah, which is the most masculine thing that you could possibly do.
This is the most masculine thing I could possibly ever do to you ever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm gonna show you power. You can't do anything about what I'm doing to you right now.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's really back to those carnal, animalistic things that just men congregate around when they're with themselves, which is very, very strange. I think just quickly from my side, like my experience was co-ed, right? So it was a co-ed experience in the West Rand, in Randfontein. And the thing is, I think I'm not going to repeat the things that you were saying, and maybe I'll just give another aspect about the conception of masculinity that was really stark in that environment. It was competition for girls. That was a big deal in my high school environment. It was competition to girls because, the guy that could fight, and beat up other guys, blah, blah, blah. That guy, he wouldn't necessarily be the most popular guy because it doesn't necessarily translate to him getting the girl or getting the girls. You know what I'm saying? It needs to be a combination of many things at the same time that make you a perfect candidate for being attractive to women, right? And so it became like that was the Game of Thrones. It was never like brute strength or anything like that necessarily. Like
wasn't sports.
It was hardly sports actually. We weren't always that good in our sporting codes and disciplines. We were actually much better in culture, right? Debating, drama, and all those things, those activities that we did. But if your merit translated to you getting more girls, you're gonna chase merit. You see what I'm saying? And that's how the socialization process would work. And again, it wouldn't be institutionally entrenched. It would be conversations among boys and girls, right? I think at some point it became so toxic, dude. It was actually very rough, right? Now, because the competition and manhood is related to chasing the girls and getting the girls, one of the biggest achievements is getting laid. That was just the biggest chat at our school. Getting laid. From early, bro. It was actually such a weird dynamic, dude. Like really, really, really weird dynamic. Like when we were in grade 8, for example, there was a phenomenon where we're grade 8 and grade 9, where senior boys are preying on younger girls, right? That was a culturally or socially accepted norm, right? For statutory rape to be committed, basically, if I may even say it like that, right? So by the time those things were happening, the boys in grade 9, like us, I don't think we were even ready for sex, bro. Like we weren't even ready for those really intense conversation about sex. And we still pretty much had our innocence intact. But the girls around us, their innocence was being taken away by the guys who were older than us. Do you see what I'm saying? And then as we got older, we started to have very, very strange observations and conversations that's like, yo, the older guys are gone. Now these are all our girls, bro. You know what I mean?
Hectic.
Now these are all our girls.
Guys now.
Yeah, we're the older guys. Do you see what I'm saying? And these girls that we are in the same grade with they are forced to be with us now. And that used to be part of the conversation we'd have. Like, a huge...
And if not us, we'll prey on the ones in grade 8 and grade 9.
Exactly. Which actually would happen, bro. Like, if not your group of friends, there's another group of friends in matric that guy's dating in grade 9 or whatever. Like, that was just the thing. Like, girls, it was just like, yo, you choose Musketeller. You just choose. You play the game. You know what I'm saying? At some point, it came to a place where in matric, so then the race was lose your virginity. That was the race. It became a really toxic game that we used to play with each other. Like almost every morning, and this started from about grade 10. Grade 10, grade 11, matric. Almost every morning, it would be like a conversation among the boys who are playing soccer with each other. Because it's so funny, like even though we're in co-ed spaces, there are always fraternal bonds. You know what I mean? That congregate around bullshit, right? So we congregate and we'd have these conversations like, hey, bruh, hey, this guy got laid, blah, blah, blah. Oh, this guy got laid, blah. That's a huge conversation. It's a huge conversation. And now there's pressure among young boys to break their virginities prematurely. Like you found yourself in instances where the pressure would mount so high, especially in matric, right? Where dudes were getting flack, bro, especially towards matric dance. Like, yo, if you don't get laid in matric dance or after matric dance week,
What the hell are
Life
you?
is over.
you over. You're not a man, dog. Like, you will never get laid, bro. Do you understand? You'll never get laid. Again, just the way I reflect on it now, and like I think I can imagine the amount of atrocious things that boys from these groups were doing to women in bed because they were chasing the feeling of coming back to their mate saying, I got laid.
Like the pleasure isn't in the sex. The pleasure is in Monday morning when I get to tell.
Exactly. Like it's like we're all ghosts in the room. You know what I'm saying? Present while you're in that activity, right? And we're doing that so that you can report back to us. So again, back to the authority thing again. Like, we are your authority. Did you get laid? You ain't shit, though. You're not a man. You know what I mean? Like, so it was very, very, very shocking stuff. And like, I think when I reflect on it now, and these are conversations I have with my brother much later, I'm like, do you know how many of us, like, prematurely lost our virginities because of that pressure? You know what I mean? Like, because virginity is innocence, actually, right? And it applies to both boys and girls, even though it is pressured to girls, right? A loss of innocence can happen to a boy as well. And I think we've never really had the conversation among men like, yo, here's the danger of prematurely losing your innocence. And this is how it's going to perpetuate in your sexual behavior for the rest of your life or for the foreseeable future.
Did you ever have conversations with like any women or young girls? Actually, is what they were. They'd be women now, but like, did you ever have any?
Nah, bro. Nah, it was. I don't think the opinions of the girls in the school
Mattered, yeah.
So we wouldn't have conversations with women.
Because I talked to him about
those things. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I can appreciate as well because there's a male pressure. There's also pressure on the other side, right? And I can imagine the conversations we had. But a huge theme at the school was sex, bro. It was just a huge theme, and I thought it was very, very crazy. And it really, I don't want to lie to you, it really, really, really like just killed a lot of one's conceptions of just monogamy and just the beauty of these things. All of these concepts were just totally killed because, again, there's always an animalistic, carnal thing that we all congregate around as boys.
Or even not just monogamy, consent, you know?
I was going to say rape as well. Consent.
Now with the requisite in, like, education. Like, because sex ed is very important.
Yeah.
But we didn't get it in school. Like, we didn't get it in, like, the time in which it was needed, because I still thinking about like notions of consent. I only understood when I came to varsity.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the notion of like what consent means, like sexual harassment, like harassing girls. Like, yeah, you think, oh no, the way to get girls is just to continuously like, hey, tandega, but did you know that that is harassment?
Yeah.
And like those things, like you start doing things you're not aware of, or you start doing things that you don't know the implications thereof, because
Not even ready for, bro.
you're not even ready for it. Like, because tandega, like to you, is just like, it's one of those things. Tandega said no, but you're harassing tandega.
But I'm
like,
not convinced, Tandek.
I'm not convinced that like every day. This is just not one of those things where it's outside of this space alone. This is a lived experience every day.
Sure.
Like, she goes home, she goes takes a taxi. There are older men who are harassing her. It's like there's all this pressure around just her entire being, and what Tandega's done in that moment. She just went to school to get an education.
Yeah.
And went back home.
Yeah.
But in between that, there's all this thing, like our own, like you said, like our own pressures from guys who are like, I need to get laid, I need to get good. So you know what? I'm gonna find a target, and now I'm finding this target.
Yeah, you're gonna find a body.
I'm gonna find a body. Just
a
start reading
vessel,
about people,
like
a
a-
vessel. Yeah, it's all about like you then start having sex
Shocking,
just
dude.
for the pleasure of other men,
Yeah.
not for you, not for the pleasure of the, like, it's just to to tell time, but yeah, no, I did it.
Yeah.
It's done. Like it's a fucking degree or like
Yeah.
this accomplishment that you then do. Like, yeah, it's finally done. Now get off my back.
And if there's a desperation to have sex, what are
There's
you
a
doing to
desperation
get?
to get that. Like, there's a lot of coercion. Like coercion is not, and this is also often sometimes something I usually think about is that I've stayed out of trouble in certain ways, not because of my own being. It's because I got lucky. I'm well aware of that. Like, I am lucky because, like, there was no pressure to get girls.
Yeah.
I was the nerdish boy in school because like, very young I realized, okay, I'm gonna have to do the school thing a lot more than what the teachers can do for me, right? So I needed to like
Exert yourself.
I needed to exert myself. Like in matric, like basically from 2 till 6, I'd go to the library and just chow course. There's no time to like do all these other things. No time to associate myself.
I
with
get
other
you on the
people.
luck thing.
Yeah,
Because
it's-
if I think of how like susceptible I was to social pressures, if I was at your school, I can't say what I'd be.
It's just a matter of like just time and place.
Yeah.
Like time and place. I remember like when I was not the most popular guy in school, but also not like the in the
Outcast,
corner.
yeah.
Outcast. Like I was like somewhere in the middle. So like you absorb some of those pressures. You are within all this because like my popularity manifested in itself is just like I was in every crowd. So the guys you speak about would smoke and gamble, like and then like I'd be there chilling with them.
Play Zweepy.
I would be gambling, but I'd learn like, oh, Mata is you know what I mean? And then during break time or during classes, I'd go chill with the girls and I have conversations about them and their boyfriends and like their life they live. And then after that, you go chill with the guys who play sports. Like I'm in all these circles, right? But
Yeah.
it's just I'm fortunate that there's no specific pressure that just overcosted all the other ones.
Yeah.
If I was played with one gang longer, I probably would have stabbed someone.
Yeah.
Like one kid
exactly.
from my school like went to prison
Yeah.
for drugs or something else. Like, and it's
Could
just
have
a
been
matter
you.
of, it could have been me. Like, there's nothing that I did that was just like, I know this is a bad decision. It's just that I probably feared my parents more than I fear these guys.
That's the thing.
It's just like one
right?
of those
That was
things
me
where-
too, to be
You know,
honest
like,
with you.
you know, my dad really knows how to lay it down, so I'm not gonna run with that. You know what I mean? So, it's just a matter of luck. But in the same way, it's just like we're not educated well enough to firstly know that this is what we're doing because it has further impact outside of just our normal conversations.
But then, even as a remedy, if that's going to be the world we live in, then it means that the only way you can stop your kid from becoming coercive or a rapist or somebody who assaults people or stabs people is that you have to be an abusive parent who's scarier than every other institution that's going to apply pressure on your child.
in the current context, I'd say yes. So like in ideal terms, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be because for me, like the sex ed thing, to touch on what you spoke about there, for me, sex ed happened in every school I went to. And
Yeah.
I went
Same.
to 2 primary schools and my high school. The issue is, I think that what I found to be the issue was, it happened in the classroom, and it ended there, right?
Thank you.
And so, like,
Yeah.
and while I think it was important, right, you would have to hear it to be, for it to mean anything. And I think many people just go to class because they have to. But also, if I spend 40 minutes on sex ed and the rest of the day learning the opposite of that, which do I take more of, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
The one on the playground is more powerful than the one in class.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, and with us in that environment, it was what made it toxic is that, again, it's virtue. So you place this credit for you being an academic achiever, for you being a head boy, for you being a whatever rugby player or high achieving blah blah, and for getting laid. You see what I'm saying?
You must.
So it's all of those things at the same time, right? And so there, in those kind of environments, like your own household values would have to be really, really strong. And I think that's where I got helped, right? Because I'd be having those conversations, but I'll have a double consciousness. Like, yeah, this is actually messed up. You know what I mean? But because I don't want to be a snide, right?
Yes.
Right? Because I'm all
What's
these nice
snide?
things. I'm in the RCL and all these things, but I also don't want to be a snide in the RCL. You know what I mean? So I find myself in those circles and in those environments. And I think that's what makes like masculinity so toxic in the school space. But let me move on to the next question. And I think I'm going to ask this. I think the focus here is going to be on both Tato and Josh. And I think I'm going to start with Tato. So, I mean, speak about the culture of silence, man, because I think the thing is about all of these institutions, right, and all of these cultures, they are kept alive by silence. So how much was that thing encouraged? Like, don't snitch, don't, like, here we fight, but you don't snitch on your boy, blah 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 blah. How much of that was a thing?
Yeah. Again, for me, the fearless theme came back. That was it, right? Like, if you speak up, if you tell, if something happens between us, and you tell a third party, a teacher, anyone else, right? One but you're afraid of me. That is an expression of fear of me. You don't want to confront me, even though confronting you means high levels of violence that I shouldn't be allowed, right? And so, like, there was that. Just people kept things to themselves. Like, the grade 8s didn't tell people what the matrics did to them at the camp, right? They don't say anything. But otherwise, like, the parents would go crazy. We specifically told them, don't tell people what happens here. Because, like, we knew it was protecting ourselves, but we sold it, and even to me it was sold as, you're part of the clique.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I realized, like, when I had to, be part of that speech, I was like, oh, this is actually me protecting myself from this kid telling their mother. And their mother. So the idea of silence is silence kind of protects violence, especially violence that is unwanted. And we know that it's unwanted. We clearly know that we shouldn't do this thing. So we encourage silence because,
But it comes from shaming vulnerability, right? And so you look at, I don't know if you've ever seen Spotlight, the movie about those Catholic clergy who were sexually harassing boys.
I haven't seen it, no.
But, like, the question becomes, why boys specifically? Why do you have these Catholic priests specifically sexually harassing and raping boys? And it comes from how it's easier to impose, like, silence as a culture on a young boy because it's easier to make him feel shame for his vulnerability, right? Whereas if you're going to go and sexually harass a young girl, I guess the chance that she'll speak out is significantly more likely than it would be with a young boy, So I think I think the violence plus that shaming of vulnerability, horrible.
Because you don't want to be the
combination.
guy that said I was sexually assaulted or raped.
Yeah, because we haven't looked at, like, things like that, sexual harassment, rape, as shameful for the perpetrator.
No.
Like, it's like the person who comes out needs to be the person that feels the shame, which is a thing.
Because why did you let that happen to you?
This is a thing that society is failing to understand and failing to grapple at. The shame should really be directed at the perpetrator. If you as someone, like, wouldn't do the same thing with someone who had a car accident. Wouldn't be like, but it's your fault. You know not to drive. You know what I mean? But somehow,
and it's literally that irrational, right?
It's irrational. Just like there's one time where you're just like, oh, someone did this to me. Like, what were you doing? What were you wearing? If you're a boy, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you fight? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that we've told them that, or at least we get told that these are the things that are supposed to protect you, and now you're in a space where you're actually vulnerable. Like, this is and this is also, like, someone has a power over you in some manner or form. So, like, also just the implications of just speaking out to that person. What if I don't get believed? And also just the notion that I am now this dude that was vulnerable to such a point where this happened to me. Rather I live with it and die with it.
Yeah, and so, it carries on. Like, even, so, like, the funny thing is, right, so, like, if there is a fight in my school and it becomes pretty serious and it gets to the principal, before we changed our principal, we had Mr. Van Wyk before and then Mr. Dynand when I was in grade 11, but with Mr. Van Wyk. So if there was a fight and it was serious and you went to his office and, like, he didn't know how to help you, he gives you gloves and you go to the boxing ring and...
Like, oh, let's finish it here.
Yeah, you finish it
Trial
there.
by combat.
Trial by combat,
Not even a
dude.
trial by combat, because, like, you're just like, no, you guys clearly want to do this thing.
Yeah, so...
Let's go.
Right? And, like...
Yo, that's nuts, dude.
Just finish it off.
and you
Game of Thrones, dude.
And you can't say anything, right? Like, shut up, right? And, like, even when things happen that require police attention, right? And
Yeah.
for me, that's the worst iteration of silence.
Because they're criminal.
Because they're a criminal.
Yes.
Right? Like, I remember what happened. I don't remember, but like the police came, right? And the thing that happened was criminal. I think someone got stabbed. Didn't
Pretty
die,
criminal.
but like pretty criminal, right?
Pretty criminal.
Quite out there.
And like Van Wyk took the two guys, the police, into his office. They came out, the police left, everyone was quiet. Like no one said anything about it. Right? I don't know what Van Wyk said to those people.
Yeah.
But like basically that like
Van Wyk.
Probably something like boys will be boys.
yeah, and like
He probably said something
But
like
the fact
that.
that it wasn't addressed afterwards, or
Yeah.
somebody was stabbed, and
yeah, and for me it's that it's like there is genuinely a culture of silence. Like the toilet thing, like we close toilets when the bell rings, right? And like sometimes seniors would go in there and like moor kids, bro. Make them
Yeah.
so on the toilet doors they weren't connected to the ceiling, so you could hold onto the top of it, right? They'd make people hold on to that thing, and while you're like hanging and dangling, then they hit you, and it's like, yeah, people just like no one. You would never tell anyone that because it's weirdly uncomfortable. At the time, I found it very funny, but like it's really weird. You know, so yeah,
The worst form of hazing. Really.
yeah.
It's the worst form of hazing.
So, yeah.
And from your side, Josh, because I remember I was in SRC, I was in transformation, and I used to sit on committees at WITS.
Yes, can't you own SLC?
Yes, so I used to sit on committees, and one of the committees I sat on was the Institutional Transformation Committee. So a big debate that happened in that committee was toxic masculinity in races. And it was the chat was, why doesn't this thing change? Like
why won't it vanish?
why won't it vanish? Like why every year do we find ourselves in incidences where there are these really derogatory songs that are being sung by these reses, sung at the female residences and those kinds of things, And my question, it's just been such a pressing question. I think for many guys who've unlearned as well. Like, why doesn't it change? Like, what about the institution that stays intact every year, year after year?
So I think what needs to happen is that we must always remember that people who are who they are outside of the conversations we have. Some people don't disagree with the status quo. And I think that's the thing.
Yes.
They don't disagree with, I am superior because I'm a man to a woman.
Yes.
They don't disagree with the notions that if you are gay, you must not be in my space. So I think that's what upholds it. So some people are not silent because of shame or anything. They're silent because whatever is happening here is fine.
Damn.
Like whatever's happening here,
It's right.
It's right.
It's
It
right.
suits me. And it's. And I don't want to like do this thing where now you start labeling different races. I think we're all equally culpable.
Yeah,
You can just,
yeah,
point
sure.
to specific
Sure,
incidences
no, fine,
from like,
yeah.
different residences. Men's race is like notorious for this.
So we talk about VITs, by the way. So
Yeah,
UCT
VITs, yeah,
might have their own versions.
like-
UJ might have their own versions.
Yeah, so
UP,
men's
etc.
race is like notorious for this thing where it's just, and it's also almost become this thing where we've just been normalized that, oh yeah, these guys are violent or these
Can we
guys are
talk
like
about like that thing? So that thing that happens to first years. So like, Sunny Side comes out, men's res comes out, and the boys must go get numbers. And if you don't get a number from a girl, you can't come back.
you can't come
Yeah.
back.
You can't come back to where you live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only way you come back is if you have a woman's number.
Yeah, those rituals. What the hell? Yeah.
So like just like
But I lived there.
whereas you just came in, you've been here for like 2 days.
So I don't even feel like I live
I
here.
don't
But
even know where like your job is.
I'm doing this so I can live here.
I'm doing this so I can get a piece of school.
Actually, yeah.
Right. EOH's rendition of that is still the same. Like, and I digress a bit. Like, it seems less malicious, but what we do is that we actually coordinate with the housecom. The housecom, like, we'll do a date for them. So you'll give the girl a rose.
Oh, so it's like a gentleman's
Yeah,
thing.
like a gentleman. It's still the same concept.
Same, bro.
It's still
Hotep.
the same.
Whole time.
Like, but it's very hotepery and like
Yeah.
that's how I label EOH guys. It's very hotepery because what they've done, they've managed to maneuver around the system.
Yeah, but our women.
Yeah, our women, like,
Yeah.
when you hear that our women is wrong, you leave that language. You maintain the notion of it, but you leave that language, which is why
Yes, more
something that
slick.
Frank, when you're still on Twitter, said something very important about like allyship. Allyship becomes very, very dangerous, because what you do is that you end up learning how to use the words.
Wow.
You end up learning how to use their language.
Come on.
And like for me, like I despise the notion of allyship. I completely hate it. I just don't have the vocabulary to like fully articulate it. But I know that innately it gives you the idea that I am safe when I could not be. And like we'll go into instances.
Or the illusion that you're
it's
safe,
the
you know.
illusion that I'm safe, but like
Safe around you or
safe
that
around
you
me.
are safe?
So we're having this conversation.
Or you're safe from being cancelled. What do you mean
You're
safe?
like you're generally like you're a safe space. You're a safe space. Like you're someone I can come to. Like
Oh, yes.
you guys have seen my politics on like on the TL and whatnot. So if something comes out that says Josh raped someone, because you know my politics, because you've seen the things I've been able to articulate, whether you like it or not, your first
There'd be people who'd be like, no,
the
Josh
first
couldn't
instinct
have
will be like,
done that.
Can't be Josh.
Can't be Josh.
Why not Josh?
PR.
Why? It's very good PR. Like,
PR.
Why not
That's
Josh?
it.
Now, true or not, right or wrong, like, but you must ask yourself, why not Josh? Because you every other day you'll be like, the numbers say, the statistics say, we must believe men and women. We must believe people who come out and say they have been sexually assaulted. But when it's Josh, there's a moment of hesitation. Why?
Yes.
Because of allyship. Because I've now put myself in this position.
Because Josh can't be trash, man.
It
Come
can't
on.
be trash. Like, yeah, he says men are trash, but no, he's not trash.
There's all the more reason for Josh to do the thing because he knows that, you know.
He's carved out some space for
You
himself.
provide yourself with
My
the protection
goodness.
that you need around this. That's why I really have issues with allyship. But anyway,
Yeah.
back to the issue of like why things sustain is because people allow it to be sustained. People want it to be sustained. I remember
Yeah.
going to gender. So when you're in housecom, you need to do a like
Safe zones training.
something like the training.
Closer there, Josh, to the mic.
What? A sex what?
What's
Safe zones training.
Oh, safe
it's
zone.
not the term they use, but it's like sort of like an induction.
Okay.
Induction. So we go through.
Didn't
all
you
the
do safe zones, ting?
Yes, when I was transformation officer, we did safe zones, but I think it was specifically for LGBT.
I remember.
I need to come back and complete that work. But yeah, like, so we're doing this induction, and so they're basically showing us like as housecom, these are things that you need to know. If a student comes to you with mental health issues, take them to CCTU. If they have issue with fees, these are the places that you
Yes.
go. We did mental health. Remember, Habib came through, spoke to us. Rob Shaman came through.
Didn't say the N word. Anyway.
Rob Shaman actually said we should work like slaves, and we're just like,
Damn.
we're a group of black students. As a white man, you can't say that. He
Damn,
felt that,
Rob.
but convo for a different time. And
So
then
Rob, do
came the
something
GEO
wild
talk,
once.
and it was done by a woman. So we had two of these.
GEO.
Gender Equity Office.
Okay.
So they're the first one, and we're listening to all these things. Like now we're the group of students. We are politically driven. So when people are saying things,
When is this?
this was 2017.
Post fees must fall, post roads must fall. People are woke. Okay. So the context, that context matters.
Yeah.
Right?
2017.
There was
A lot.
paradigm shift.
Yes. So like
Yeah.
we're doing this thing where we're doing a back and forth. So when CCTU comes through, we grill them. Like CCTU is inadequate in these ways, and how you're going to fix them for our students. Transformation office comes through. We do the whole thing. Transformation, like how we're not transformed because we just had a white man enter a space where he wasn't supposed to. When a qualified black woman, we're doing the whole thing. GEO comes through. Men's dress guys sleep
Damn.
on the table. I hope it like on the table they sleep. They have no interest in what you're about to say because their status quo is fine. We later have the same.
We hate the race stuff, but we love the
Race, oh
sexism
my
thing.
God.
Dog race,
But
bro.
when it comes to like, it wasn't even a matter of like, they were just trying to teach you the dynamics of, listen, you are going to be these seniors who are 3 or 4 years in, you're going to be in contact with 18-year-olds. Here's why it is inappropriate for you to have any relations with them.
Yeah.
Any functioning human being should be like, I get it, because now we've explained the notions of power dynamics.
Absolutely. Thank you.
However, but if I don't agree with you, nothing's going to change. And this was seen later on the following year when I think there was a worker strike around. I remember there was a worker strike around the time when we did the second induction with gender equity. So now it was done by like sort of like the reps, interns, ish that do the work. And I remember we're not discussing things like sexuality and whatnot, because and it's unfortunate that he had to be the guy from men's race, but I remember him actually asking, what if I do not want to associate with gay people? And then we had to start bringing the constitution and law. When your argument, like, yeah, but it's a fundamental right. But my saying that doesn't change the fact that this person does not want to associate.
Doesn't change perception.
He does not want to. And the thing is, the people around him agree. And the people around them are going to be the people who are now initiating or orientating first years.
Sure.
So those first years are going to be filled with that very same notion that this person has. Because he's not going to take the things that were told in those inductions and translate them into work. No, it's going to reinforce whatever perceptions that these first years already had, because they also come with their own notions of whatever masculinity means from their own homes. You get here and like it's still reinforced. Like, oh, this is the status quo. So it just becomes a cycle of like it keeps feeding into yourself. Again, I think when you spoke about like how I just got lucky, I was lucky that I didn't stay at res in my first year. So I wasn't like oriented
in that way. Yes.
In that way, like I stayed with my.
So
brother.
you retained your household, family values,
whatever values I had at the time, or whatever notions I had at the time. And then when I came into Wits, like I sort of was like, when you're a student, you like, I mean, not that this happens to everyone. You come in like me, I'm just gonna focus on my degree. I'm gonna try course. That's what I did. I got myself a girlfriend. We chill in our room. I remember there was an EH party. So I just walked past because I didn't care. Like, this was not for me. Right? So I'm not in those spaces, and this is just like by sheer luck. There's no active decision that I made that was like anti this thing. It was just by sheer luck.
It wasn't an ethical, I don't agree with it, this is wrong.
Nothing. Like,
and maybe at some point you might have even agreed in some instances.
I might have agreed, like, oh no, like these songs are fine. These songs are fine. And this is the thing, we participated in these awards. Oh my God.
I've heard of those awards, man. Oh man.
Wow, they are so god awful. Like they are god awful. There's one in particular. It was called like panel beater. So when you panel beat a car, right? Because it's like broken. That was the term given to the guy who was singing with the quote unquote ugliest girl.
Oh my.
That has
goodness.
What?
Do you understand? Like what that, and the thing is, like, these things are now open. Like back in the day they tried to be closed, but now these things are open, so this information is likely going to get back to this very same girl.
Yeah, dude.
You understand? Like,
absolutely. There's a bit of pride in that.
Like,
someone has to say it eventually.
So it's just like these spaces are so bad. Like, and I did nothing. I really want to, like, I did nothing to remove myself from there. I just so happened to be in spaces where I realized, oh, you know what, these things no longer make sense. These things are no longer things that I value. And I'm courageous enough to actually go against them, because that's also a thing. Because you can disagree with something and still be quiet. Now I'm courageous enough to actually speak about it, because like the social capital that comes with certain things.
Sure, this is so existential.
Like it becomes this huge thing that you just try to grapple with every day, but talking back to your original question, is that people are who they are.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't know about violence. It's not like we're uninformed about gender-based violence. It's not like we're uninformed about patriarchy.
It's varsity, for goodness sake.
Varsity. Just people are fine with that thing. In fact, they endorse it. They endorse patriarchy. They endorse gender-based violence. They don't endorse certain things. They'll speak it. They're very good in speaking. Like, they don't endorse coercion. But they do, like, oh my God, wow. Just remembered something else. This was at EOH. I'm glad
so many blurred lines. Yeah.
I'm glad this was at EOH, because we're trying to be woke. We're trying to.
Yeah. Although it's not just it's all the spaces, man.
It's all the spaces.
And plus, you are from EOH.
Represent. We have the Gender Equity Office come through to do a talk. The second one did not.
It must have been such a nightmare for these poor people to come to these damn raises and do talks.
It was fairly okayish, because they really want to do that work.
Okay, good.
That's one thing that I've seen about them. That's why I always appreciate them. It's not like they don't do it with the heavy heart. They do it because they see a purpose behind it.
Yes, absolutely.
So we do it, and it's advertised well. Like, so like now it's at EOH, but like there's a lot of people who are coming through. I remember like there's people from Jubilee, Sunnyside, all taking the bus coming to this.
So all the girls and boys raises.
Girls and boys raises.
Yeah.
This is important. We go through the whole thing. Things like maybe an hour and a half or two. Go through the whole thing. While we are there, one guy stands, and I despise this man until this day, stands up after the talk. He says, "Comrades, I know you are trying to be woke here because there's a nice woman and whatnot. Says, but let's not act like a no is not always a no." This is after the talk.
After the talk on consent, after the
were
talk on harassment,
enraged.
after
All of
the
us,
oh my god,
Everyone is like, okay, this is time. So I know like who I am, and when I become that, so I was like, I stood up and was like, this is bullshit. I'm going to leave. I am, because we're going to fight, and like I just
yeah, you're gonna engage in something else that's toxic.
It's toxic as well. Like the idea of violence. Violence is not just about you; it's also about the people that are around you.
Yes, yes,
Some people
you've
are
killed the
triggered.
safety of the
Yeah,
space.
some people are triggered by violence, but this is because. So, my point is like this man heard the whole thing. He's the 50 or 60 medic, so he understands the language we're speaking about. It's not a language barrier. He just believes that a no is not always a no. And there's no way
That women inherently want it.
they inherently want me to chase after you. And like, I don't know, maybe like
Or that women sometimes don't know what they want, and I must decide.
Oh,
yes,
yes, that's more pointed.
You know,
And no, Scott,
Yes,
I'll
what are you
decide
doing?
for you.
yeah, you left your room to come take a bus, and now it's 11. Obviously, you know what.
Yeah, Kantia, what do you want here?
You know what I mean? It's those notions, like, and I don't know. Maybe like I haven't thought about it long enough, but I don't see a way around it, and I think that's quite sad. I don't see a way around. It's one thing if you don't know, and I need to convince you. I'll do that every day.
Yeah.
It's that after I've convinced you, you're still saying, but you're talking nonsense.
So my next question is, and I think this is going to be the question that almost rounds up our conversation in general, because I think intuitively, with all of the things that we've said about these schools, we can say what are the kind of men that come out of these spaces. If we look at the list, I forgot what that list was called, like in 2017.
The roads, yeah.
It's called the list.
Yeah, it's called the list, but it started from Rhodes University, right?
The RU.
Yes. So if you look at that, right? If you look at that list in isolation, you're like, whoa. There are so many crazy people in that university. What the hell is going on? Why are there so many people raping people, right? And then you look at that list in context of what you heard about what happens in residences in general. You're like, of course.
That's a
that
logical
many
conclusion
people.
of
Exactly. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. Like, we can literally say point blank, these are the kind of men that come out of these spaces.
Sure.
Men that have committed rape, men that have committed sexual harassment and all those kinds of things, although they are not being outed from these spaces. So my question then is, and this also applies to us co-ed people as well. What does it take to change these institutions? At least from your opinion, I think I'm not giving us the burden necessarily to totally change the institution, but like, but now, how do we see change eventually? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, Tato, maybe from your side.
Sure. So for me, changing behavior as a thing, right, is a very difficult question to answer because, like, I think not only behavior and things people believe, because as Josh says, people believe these things. And I think ultimately, institutions, what an institution is, in my humble view, is a dispenser of ideology.
Yes.
Right? All it does is feed you ideology, right? And so if you come from an institution, right, the first one you get introduced to is the family, right? If that institution says to you, this is what it means to be a man, right? And then when the second institution you go to is probably a school, and that institution says this is what it means to be a man. In that school, you get in. There's another institution, the church or whatever. If that itself is problematic, for me it's that, like, when you think about the way men behave as an ideology, right, it becomes clear that, like, nothing should be kind of saved from critique.
Yes,
right?
okay.
Because we have spaces of people who don't want to be critiqued.
Yeah.
Like, it's sad that King Zolitini has just died, but, like, an example I want to make, right, is that, like, when you critique people like monarchs, people are like, you shouldn't do, you shouldn't do that for whatever reason, because
I hear you.
the reason would be you're applying white standards to whatever,
African culture, native African culture,
right? Saying that I'm a black feminist, but somehow not wanting that itself, while it is a critique of a particular type of feminism itself requires critique. I'm an African nationalist. Itself requires nothing must be safe from scrutiny. Nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Because ultimately, these behaviors permeate through everything. Right? We get them from everything we do. Right? That's why it's hard for a single course, even if you do it from grade 0 to grade 12. On sex ed, it'll be very difficult for it to like change people's behavior. It'll be very difficult for the GO to come and have one talk,
because it competes with so many different
things.
With a person's entire lived experience.
Yeah. So for me, how do you change it? I think there's genuinely the job of an activist is to constantly be trying to change these spaces,
agitating,
and unfortunately, also trying to, for you, Josh, who left the space, right, is unfortunately trying to build ties, right, and then not always going to be like-minded, those people, and some of them you're going to make them like-minded in a particular issue. Try and make ties with those people such that your progressive ideas themselves form an institution, right?
I see.
So, for example, and this is a simple example. We have this in the olden days. Trade unions, right? We think of trade unions now. We don't think about where they come from because they've been here for as long as I've been alive. But like genuinely, workers thought that like where they were sucked. Like, their working conditions really sucked. And so, what do? You talk to other workers, and you guys in the firm kind of talk to the boss collectively. That kind of work, but it doesn't work because ultimately, if it gives if you concede to what you want, he'll run out of business because these other guys will outcompete him because they don't have to do what he does. So the only way is for the workers in a particular industry or maybe all around is to form a union collectively. Because if you do it one by one, that practice will continue. So eventually, when you need a job, the guy who outcompeted your boss is going to hire you into the same conditions. So the only way to do it is to have your ideas, be strong about them, and build ties, and just keep going. Because unfortunately, there'll always be patriarchs and misogynists who will do similar kinds of work. And for the moment, they're stronger.
Josh?
No, I think like personally, this is just my own personal thing. I don't believe in that you can educate someone who doesn't want to be educated.
Yeah. Yeah, a fool is a fool.
And I've seen that. It's unfortunate, but I've seen that. And
getting it. Yeah, it's a principle.
One thing you can do, especially in spaces which you govern over, and we can have other criticisms of like of our former VC and whatnot. One of the failures which I think he had, and this is also not like something I'm blaming on it, it was also like something I realized after, that you can't change someone's idea on something, but you can force them to behave a specific way. You will learn how to behave in a society. And there must be repercussions thereof if you can't do that. So if we're in a space where now someone says, this person has harassed me, it shouldn't be just a matter of, we'll just like do some disciplinary hearing and that's it. There should be real life consequences to those things. Because you're actively saying that this is the behavior that we do not want.
Yeah.
Like you can't then say, this is the behavior that we do not want, but it's tolerable in some instances. There needs to be like a blanket statement.
Yeah.
Like, you must conform to these social norms.
Yeah.
You must say,
values,
like,
a set of
these are our
values.
values as an institution. And the thing is, we do that everywhere. They do that everywhere at medical school. It's now like it's a thing. Like you can't smoke. I think at UCT medical, so there's also introduced like you can't smoke. This is just a health thing. Why can't we do that with everything else?
Wow.
Why can't we say those things? Why can't we then say, like, I can't stop you from smoking, but you can't smoke in here? You know what I mean? Because here we're against this notion of smoking because this is our ideal. In the same way, I can't change you any ideas you think about patriarchy, but you will not harass people here. That is our stance, that everyone must be safe here. And this is something I think they have failed to do because there'll always be people who compete against that thing, because then you start asking yourself, okay, but where do you draw the line? Come slippery slope, things like that. But
Yeah. Or maybe they never even thought it was important.
and some people
Or
don't
some
think it's
behaviors aren't conspicuous.
some
Yeah.
behaviors are not conspicuous, but I genuinely believe that controlling people's behavior around certain spaces is fine, because in as much as I might know, okay, you know, that group of guys, let's say I'm a woman, that group of guys is not safe. If I'm walking past, they'll probably catcall me in broad daylight. If you can have something that restricts that,
Yes.
then they'll be able to safely pass through.
Yes.
Because it's not an infringement of your right to say you can't catcall someone.
Yeah.
Don't catcall
Yeah,
someone in
you don't
general.
have the right to catcall anyone.
You don't have the right to catcall, but I do
Yeah.
have the right to be safe in any space that I am in.
So if we're weighing the rights, we know which one to
We
limit.
know
Yeah.
which one to do. Like, and I think that's something that I've failed to look into, or maybe like maybe they have and there's issues somewhere along the line, but I don't think that.
You know why I think that is a dangerous idea, right?
Yeah, close
and
to
not
the mic.
not even dangerous, but I think why I think it falls is because ultimately, right? Let's assume someone catcalls someone, and we disagree with him. We kick him out of a university. He's like, actually, I'm taking you to court. You get to court, and your chief justice. You go through all the courts, and your chief justice is a misogynist. Right? What do? Right? Because he's not bound by the same rules of that single institution or whatever. And that's why my genuine idea was these things need institutional protection, right? And not just one institution. Yeah. Many institutions, most of the institutions. That's how patriarchy is in our society today. Most institutions are in fact patriarchal, right? And for as long as they are, I don't think there'll ever be a case where any single university or any workplace, right, can successfully get rid of it by itself, because ultimately you'll just lose socially. You're just gonna lose, right? And for me, that becomes the issue, right? Apartheid didn't end because we decided we're going to change our laws. It was because we had built the biggest solidarity movement in the world ever, right?
Sure. Dooms, especially from the school perspective.
From the school perspective, I think, sure, and this obviously isn't the most realistic thing, but I think I struggle to understand why all boy institutions exist, specifically in this context, right? So if you're not going to be an institution of only men or only boys that is specifically designed to reframe masculinity, then I don't actually get why you're here. You know what I mean? And I think I was at Parktown Boys the other day, and because my physio's rooms are at Parktown Boys. And I'm walking through that place, and I'm just looking at, and I'm like, I genuinely don't get it, right? And it's not to say that like there isn't like value in spaces like that, but I think any value you can get in that space, you can get in a co-ed school as well. So I don't know if all boys schools have a specific value proposition that they can provide, where that can't be found in another space.
Warrants them continuously existing.
Exactly, and
It's very interesting.
I struggle to understand why we should continue to contend with sexual harassment at schools, like sexual harassment and rape at schools like Parktown Boys or at Bishop.
But the thing is, it still translates the same way in co-ed schools.
It does.
So
It
see, that's
absolutely
the real problem, is like because that toxic masculinity, the way it's defined and the way it's characterized and manifests in all boys schools, pretty much manifests the same way in co-ed.
Sure. It's just that now they're
just without girls.
It's just that now there are women there who you can victimize as well.
Right there.
Yeah,
So
I hear you.
it's really, really tough. Look, man, I think I agree with what you guys are saying, man. I think with regards to the activism, because at the end of the day, like institutions need to be compelled to change from the top, but they need to be compelled from the ground in order to do so.
Upward pressure.
It's upward pressure. So I think the paradigm shift. I think we shouldn't sleep on the paradigm shift of roads must fall and fees must fall. Honestly, guys, we shouldn't sleep on that paradigm shift, because now it's more popular to have the conversation about or to even have the GO come in the first place than it was before, right? Before it was like the GO won't even come here because what are you gonna do here, right? Now it's like, okay, I think we feel like some kind of moral compulsion to give this attention, right? And I think it's only because of activism. And I think in those spaces, in the RMF especially, I think RMF especially achieved this more, where it was, okay, yo, shout out to race, man, but this is actually intersectional, right? And now it became a big protest movement, right? Where different marginalized groups came to the forefront with their issues. And it was like every different iteration of the protest, someone else or one group, another group is leading the entire movement. Do you see what I'm saying? So I really think there was a moral and ideological paradigm shift for institutions, and maybe we're yet to see the true benefits of it right now, right? I think my point is maybe the glass is half full.
No,
You know what I mean?
is.
Yeah, maybe the glass is half full. Any last, literally 2 to 3 sentences, parting thoughts? We're gonna start with Josh and take it all the way here.
Yeesh. I didn't think about that, but I think it's necessary, like to have these conversations.
Yeah.
It's just that it's unfortunate that at times in certain spaces they just stop at being conversations.
Yeah.
Like we'll have a gender equity talk and it'll just stop there, and you'll get the same guys will use the same language to the woman who just spoke to them about using certain language to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it is necessary, and I think you must persevere, and I think that's where my stance with allyship comes from, is that it can't just be a conversation where you just stop at the door, because it doesn't necessarily involve you. Like if you're going to say that this is a change that I want to see, you must be complicit in it. You must be complicit in everything.
The stakes must be high.
The stakes must be high for you, because one of the issues with being an ally is that you always have the option to opt out. And I think always, like, never opt out. Like if you're going to be serious about something, if you want to say that this is the change that I want to see, then don't opt out. Like fight for it. Like this is in Nelson Mandela's famous words, this is an ideal for which I'm prepared to die. Like have that level of conviction, even though it does not innately involve you. You know what I mean? Like even if I am not the oppressed when it comes to the situation, you must follow through. And I think that's the only way in which something like that can bring about any form of change.
Powerful. Tato?
I don't have a lot. I think I said everything, but I'll say for me, it's always think about the things you think about. Never think that you have the answers to things. Even when you do, even after you find them, go on. There's a lot more that's going on in that thing.
Keep digging.
You know, just keep digging. And then because I have nothing more to say, I'm going to plug Wendy Brown's book. It's called Men and Politics, or Manhood and Politics, Wendy Brown.
It'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, just Wendy Brown, man, you'll find it. I think, it's genuinely, Wendy Brown is amazing. She's Judith Butler's partner. So if you know Judith Butler, that's her life partner. I think it's brilliant. I'm not even going to say what it does, what it is. I think people must go in there with just to read the book.
Yeah, the literature.
I might have got her pronouns wrong, and I apologize, but yes.
Dooms?
I'm just thinking about what Tato said about building institutions. If we're going to live in a world, because we live in a world where your teachings at home will be invalidated by your child's teachings at school and at university, it means discussions like this, right? Discussions like this are what create the institutions. So I think just keep having discussions like this. And I mean, like you said, to the extent that you can take it beyond the discussion, also do that. Do what you can and what you have to. Stop sucking.
Yeah, I think from my side is like, be sincere and be empathetic. This is how I think you prevent that situation where people just have good PR and do it for the sake of good PR. Like if our fight on learning and unlearning is defeating the patriarchy, bro. No cap, right? And equalizing the playing field between men and women by acknowledging that as men, we are socialized in such a way that is toxic and unsafe for women, and we need to actively do that exercise. And I think many more men need to take up that mantle in their own spaces. Again, this is why we say this all the time, in your braais, in your WhatsApp groups, in your football teams or your five-a-side soccer teams, you know, in all of those spaces that you exist in as each other. Always know two things. One, you all have the capacity to the worst kind of violence towards women. And two, you thus all have the capacity to make spaces safe for all genders. Right? With that, thank you very much. I'd like to give a big shout out to Busi Mkumbuzi Powe, wifey, for all the digital marketing material, cover art, all those things. Shout out to Tato, shout out to Tabo, shout out to Lou for putting the podcast together as well. Yo, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, or any of your favorite platforms. And make sure it's a 5-star review. If it's not 5 stars, don't review. Just don't click nothing. Don't even listen. Just leave us alone. Otherwise, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.